What a great turnout. I thought it was going to be a pretty good turnout because this is a pretty important topic. Jordan next door, he's doing a marketing message one, and I told him that they should give us most of his room because we were going to be packed out. This is a really important topic. The agenda title is Lead Generation and Franchise Sales. So something that hopefully creates a tremendous amount of value for you all, not just today, but long-term value. That's what we're trying to do. We have an amazing group of panelists, and so there's no wonder that we have so many of you that have shown up today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I think we are running a bit behind, so this is planning to go to about 12:35. Then it'll be a quick little break right into lunch, so you know. And there's more seats up here if anybody wants to grab some as well. So real quick, I wanted to say one real quick thing about franchise development, then we'll introduce our panelists. You know, a lot of people, or a lot of franchisors, I should say, especially emerging franchisors, they enter franchising, I think, sometimes underestimate the challenge of franchise development, right? There's 4,000 franchisors out there. I've heard something like 300 new franchisors are introduced every year, right? So you're brand new and you're trying to figure out a way that you're going to get attention, you're going to get people to trust you. How are you going to get validation? You're going up against some of the largest brands in the country and you're trying to convince a pioneer of your brand to come in and trust you, which is a really challenging thing. On top of that, you got to run operations, you got to run your team, you got to figure out how to fund it all. Oh, and by the way, FranConnect came out recently, or last year, and said about 1/2 of 1% of the people that inquire about your brand are actually going to purchase. So 1 out of 200 people that are expecting a phone call back from you have a chance of buy-in, and about 80%, that founders, plug your ears, you're not gonna like this, but about 80% of franchise candidates that reach out to your brand will never get any communication back. So you're gonna go put a marketing budget together, let's say 1,000 people inquire, 200 of them are gonna hear from your people, 800 of them are not, right? Such a challenging thing to go create momentum in. So again, no wonder this room is packed out, and no wonder we have this group of panelists. We have 2 topics, which we're gonna get into here quickly, but first, we just wanna do some introduction. So Tim, since we put you all the way at the end, how about we start with you?
I'm not sure why they put the big boys, Steve White and I, in the end. What do we do? It's good to be here, everybody. Long-time Springboard attendee, my 27th year in franchising. Many of those years in residential house cleaning with the Cleaning Authority, you heard Rob talk about this morning, and then my last 7 with Oasis Senior Advisors. It's always humbling to be here, even though in franchising many years, and I'm still writing notes. So we can always learn. We can always get better at what we do, and that's what these events are all about. So I'm excited you're here. Listen to us today, so hopefully I have some good nuggets for you.
Great. Tim, number 2.
How are you? Yeah, Tim, number 2. Welcome, everybody. Tim Courtney. I'm the Vice President of Franchise Development for PuroClean. I have title envy. I guess I'm the only non-CEO president here, so Steve, maybe we can work on that. I've been in franchise development for over 12 years. I started off at a home-based travel agency brand called Cruise One Dream Vacations, built them up from 400 units to 1,200 in 5 years, and now tasked at PuroClean running their franchise development. We're about to close on my 200th deal there real soon, and I've only been there 4 years at PuroClean. So love to give back to this community, love to share knowledge, so thank you, and I hope you enjoy.
Jania.
I'm Jania Bailey, and I'm the CEO of FranNet. We are a 34-year-old broker consultant group, referral network. We're called lots of things. We're just glad when you call us. So we have offices throughout the U.S., Canada, and a presence in Canada. We are a franchise ourselves. So one of the things that differentiates us is we're able to work with a emerging brand on a regional basis and not be shotgunning out everywhere. So that's a little bit about me. My background, I was a banker for, was I off? Oh, I thought my voice will carry anyway. I was a banker for 18 years in commercial lending. I got into franchising quite by chance, and I've been in franchising now about 22 years, so I've been around a little bit. I was in regional development and franchise sales, so a little bit of background before I got to FranNet.
Great, thank you. Tom?
That's pretty hard to follow. So thanks for putting me last. I appreciate that. My name's Tom Wood. Good morning, everybody. I'm the CEO at Floor Coverings International. I started in franchising in 1985, 36 years ago. All of my career has been with First Service Brands. So I'm with Floor Coverings International, 16 years there. Before that, Certa Pro Painters, and we also have California Closets and Pillar to Post Home Inspection and Paul Davis Restoration.
Fantastic. And hi, everybody. I'm Brian Zink. My whole career has been franchising as well. Started with a GNC franchise, eventually co-founded a nutrition franchise called Complete Nutrition. We grew it up to a couple hundred locations and sold it. And then today I am a CEO and co-founder of Franchise FastLane. We represent emerging franchisors. We like to say we represent the next big thing. We represent 16 emerging franchisors today. And this year we should award about 1,300 to 1,400 franchise licenses across those. So we have two topics today, lead generation and franchise sales. Two things that mesh together very well, obviously, but one happens before the other. So we're going to start with the first one, which is lead generation. There's lots of topics on the sheet that they gave us, but prior to this, we got together and said, hey, which one's our favorite? Which one would we like to share with the group that we feel most knowledgeable about? And so, Tom, since we introduced you last, is it okay if I ask you to kick us off? And what was your topic? Oh, there it is, brokers, consultants.
I'm actually going to pass to Jana and ask Jana to go first from the broker side, and then how about if I pick up from the franchisor side? I thought that might be the easier way to introduce us. Is that
That'd
okay?
be great, sure. Well, when you decide you're ready to work with brokers, there's a lot of things to consider, and you really have more choices now. I did a list the other day of all the different broker groups that have emerged in the last 15 years that I've been CEO of FranNet, and it's really scary. It's scary in that there's so many and the choices you all have to go through and trying to weed through it. And how many do you want to work with? And what are you trying to accomplish? What are your goals? So you need to ask yourself those questions ahead of time. Young brands that try to work, I had one brand tell me they were working with 17 broker groups. I couldn't even imagine trying to work with 17 broker groups. Back when I was in sales, I worked with 3 different groups, and one of those I got around to kind of like I would portal leads. The other, the world stopped when I got a lead on my fax machine, how old I am, and everything had to go to that one because I knew I had a potential deal there. So you've got to look at and find out where you're going to fit, where you're going to get traction. There's a lot of things competing for the broker's time and attention. And one of the main things is, do you have people that you're entrusting with getting leads for you? Are you providing them with someone that can close the deal if they get a lead? So a lot of brands will come through and they ask, what do I look at? We turn down a lot of brands every year. This is not anybody can sign up. If anybody can sign up, you're just going to be one of the jillion in there. For us, we go through and we really try to make an effort to know who's going to get some traction. I can never guarantee that. But what we look for, strong balance sheet. Do you have the capital to support the growth once you get the sales? Selling is easy compared to getting them launched and actually getting them up and operational. And because we are territory-based, that's important to me because these are people my franchisees are going to have to live with after the sale. They're going to come back and go, why did you introduce me to that brand? So having a good, strong balance sheet, being capitalized and ready to support the growth. Validation is key. If you don't have solid validation, we can't do a thing for you because our clients are going to call your franchisees, and when they hear them crying and saying, I just lost my home, I'm getting a divorce, worst decision I ever made in my life, they're going to come back at us and say, what in the world are you doing repping this brand? So that's real big. But having the person that knows how to close a deal. And there are great development companies out there. There are several represented here, and there's some you should run for your life from. Not everybody that tells you they're great at sales is great at sales. If you want to know who's great at sales, call a few of us that have been around a while, and we'll tell you not to waste your money in certain places and where you might want to look otherwise. So with that, I'll give it over to Tom.
All right, and I'll talk from the other side of the fence just a little bit. And Jana and I do a lot of business together, so everything I'm about to say has nothing to compete with what Jana just said. So at Floor Coverings International, we do about 80% of our annual placements through brokers. So we have a very clear broker consultant strategy. And I generally find that there's 4 things that you've got to be considering if you're going to have a broker strategy, not including the fact that you actually have to have a strategy that you can execute. The first one is, do you have a solid brand with a compelling reason for that consultant to want to show you? Because the consultants in and of themselves, in my opinion, are salespeople. They do what they do because they have to earn a living, they have to make placements, and they only want to make placements with brands that are very compelling. And as Jana said, that the franchisees are going to be able to be successful. But it's a combination of the two. Is it a compelling brand that they can pitch and somebody is going to be interested in, but then also, and at least equal to, is their franchisee going to be successful when they come there? So the first piece here is you have to have something compelling that the brokers are going to want to show you that they can find a way for their candidates to be interested in. And what I'll add to that is don't assume that that broker consultant is going to know how to pitch you and be able to make your brand be compelling. You have to communicate that, coach them with it, and help them. The second one is, what's your fee strategy, to the brokers and consultants? So I just shared, we have about 80% of our placements essentially go through broker consultants. We also have a very, very high closing rate. But if we don't have a very compelling fee as well to the consultants, again, as they're business people, the numbers just don't add up to them. So the second thing is, do your homework. Make sure you understand where you need to be placed for these consultants with your fee strategy so that, again, they have a reason to be able to show you so that they can make the best living possible, and you have to do your homework. Now, one thing I'll add to that as well. If you are a brand that sells just one franchise at a time, meaning you don't do multi-packs, it is very important that you are not looking at what is your fee as compared to another single unit from a brand that sells multi-packs, because you're actually going to be compared your fee to the average multi-pack combined fee. And again, if you want those broker consultants' attention, you've got to be able to compare apples to apples. So that's the second piece. Third one is your communication plan to help the brokers and the consultants understand who you are, what you do, how you do it, so that they can succinctly take that and communicate it to a candidate, as well as where you have available territories, because they don't want to waste their time getting a candidate interested and then find out you don't have anything available. And then the last one is, you've got to be good closers. So when you get a lead, you better be good at what you do to convert that lead, or that consultant, again, doesn't get a fee placement and they're going to lose interest in you real quickly. So those are the 4 things that we look at.
The only thing I would add to that, to piggyback, is good at communication. We call it frickin' frack.
Yeah.
So having that ongoing communication with the franchisor and the broker is the key, and that's really where the magic happens. It's not just you get a lead thrown to you and we're done. You've got to have that ongoing conversation to work the deal and to keep each other informed to be able to help the deal through the process.
That's great. So, if I had 2 takeaways from there, I heard 2 things if you're an emerging franchisor. One, first, be a franchise concept that is worthy of a candidate that's going to put them in a successful position. And number 2, it's about building relationships. I can tell you, if you're new to entering any of the consultant groups, you're up against people that have built those relationships for many, many years and have done many, many deals. And so you need to be persistent and you need to be patient. And it took us all time to go create those relationships. So just have that patience for yourself too. One other thing I wanted to add, and then we'll throw it over to Tim on PR, is, if you're an emerging franchisor, you're going to hear a lot of strategies here today. I would really encourage you I got a piece of advice long ago, is do less better. Focus on 1 or 2 of these strategies and go at it really hard. Doing all of them is nearly impossible for an emerging franchisor. You won't have the resources or the budget to do it typically. So I'd focus on 1 or 2 and really go at those hard. Tim, can we go down to you for some PR?
Sure. I do want to add a couple points to that, because this is a huge, I think, piece of what so many of us in franchising do. We do about 90-95% of all of our deals through brokers. And if you're an emerging franchisor, one of the things you can do to really harm yourself is not have that really successful closer salesperson in-house before you start working with brokers. Once the word gets out there that you can't close and you can't get deals done, and sometimes the owners are the ones that are doing the sales up front. Sometimes that can be good, sometimes that is a curse. But once the word is out there that you're not strong, it spreads like wildfire. And the brokers tend to avoid sending you leads. So just know that from up front. Sorry to be back on that. So a second of PR, a couple ways you do PR on the development side. And certainly for your franchise system itself, many of you will be working with PR firms like Fishman PR, and there's a couple others out there that help you get the brand awareness and name recognition out. But in the franchise development side, it's a touch different because what do you have the PR for, right? What is it trying to promote in the development side? So we look at PR in two different ways on the dev side. And the first way is to the brokers themselves, right? Getting PR out there of a deal that has been done, especially with a broker group. We'll do a deal with FranNet. We want to do a deal announcement, explain who the candidate was, why they chose Oasis, and what a great opportunity it was to work with this broker to get this deal done, and that goes out to their broker group. It's a great PR piece, right, within the broker networks itself. But we'll also send that same piece, removing the FranNet name and the broker, to all the other broker groups as well. Because again, what you're trying to do with PR is build that momentum. And again, in the franchise dev, if you're brand new, you have no credibility, you're starting from scratch, so it's really a challenge to do that. So this is one way to get, again, on the broker side with that PR on the deal announcements, getting your name out there, even though it wasn't that franchise consulting group's deal, but it builds momentum. Oh, they're closing deals. They see this coming. And that's an important one. And then once you have a new franchisee, right, that PR is also good to go out to all of, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute as well, social media. Social media, as we all know, is huge. I'm an old school guy, but I'm learning every day about that. And the PR you can do on Facebook and LinkedIn and Google My Business, on these little snippets of what has just transpired within your organization with a new deal, with a new franchisee. Hey, all excited. The excitement is very high, makes that franchisee feel good, but it also gets your name out there a little bit more. PR, again, about brand awareness, name recognition, finding out how you're being received from the media that you're putting that into. I think it's important also on the PR side, right? You know, they say there's no such thing as bad PR. I'm not sure if I quite believe that all the way. Brad Fishman likes to tell me that all the time. Any PR is good. No, not always. But what can happen too with the PR that you're using within your networks, right? Whatever your brand is, right, you have databases of people, whether it's your customers, whether it's your vendors, whoever it may be, right? Those are all sources that you need to be sending PR to, because it may not be necessarily a candidate or groups of candidates or lead flow people that you're looking for. Your leads can come from anywhere, and sometimes it's a friend of a friend of a friend that saw this on Facebook or LinkedIn, says, oh, you know, that might be kind of interesting. So the more you can get the name out there with the PR, the stronger it's going to be for the franchise dev side as well.
Okay, with that, we're going to go to Tim Courtney, and this is probably a topic that's near and dear to a lot of your hearts. It's non-paid media. How do we go out there and get some of these things without a lot of money?
Yeah, so that's awesome. So I love, what Tim here said with PR. I mean, PR is great, and then getting that out certainly on all of your social channels, especially if you have, a lot of your customers following you on social media, and because if you look at that, your customers could also be future franchise owners, and it happens every day. So that's continue to push those out. There are some other things that are out there. I know we got some friends from Entrepreneur Magazine. They do a free listing. Is that true? Simron's still doing that. So you want to maybe find some of them and get a free listing with them that gets out there and works. Some of the other things too that we're also looking at is also your own franchise owners. You might want to offer them to be paid a referral fee if they refer you a franchise owner. And especially, you want to get this going early on. You want all your franchisees, like we have a PuroClean, one team. And if you can put out that one team culture where we're all in this together, a rising tides lifts all boats, your franchisees will become your biggest referral sources. I mean, I still get a ton from my own franchises in our network, and we pay a $10,000 fee. Now, again, we're a little bigger brand, and that's what we choose, and we have a pretty decent franchise fee. So you can figure that out where you can make them as ambassadors. And certainly, so again, look at your own customer base. There are other ways, opportunities to get free listings. I think one of the portals now also offers a free listing as long as you answer a few survey questions for them. Continue to drive your social and PR. So.
Wonderful, very good. Non-paid is always a great way to get leads, right? Something that obviously is a big part of FranDev, and I think still a little bit misunderstood by a lot of franchisors, is social media. Paid social media, paid search. How do we use the internet to go find leads? And so, Tim Evankovich, if you don't mind, I'm going to throw it back to you to talk a little bit about social media.
How many marketing people do we have here in the room today? Bigger hands, come on. Okay. I was afraid of that. So with social media and your dev program, there certainly are a multitude of options for you. The basic ones you have, the Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google My Business, Instagram, all the favorites. I'm not an Instagram person, I'm not a Twitter person. Note my age. But from those, there are still a ton from the dev side that you can do. And the more you can put on there, and I think the differentiation that you need to make here too is make sure you not only have, obviously, social media for your brand, but a separate social media account for dev as well. They need to be separate because the message is different, and who that message is going to needs to be different as well. So we like to put on our social media, again, we're using the three major, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google My Business for us, because we're on the dev side, it's building, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to post at least once a week, if not twice a week, and we're pulling blogs, anything that has to do with sales, with franchise development, obviously deal announcements, those always go on there. And also we're gonna piggyback and pull down the full PR piece from a new franchisee that just got into business, right? We have our PR firm that writes the big long page article about this person. That's gonna go on there as well because it builds momentum, it builds excitement and energy about your program, right? I know specifically we've got at least a handful of deals that have gotten done because they started on social media. Then they go to your webpage. Then they go find a broker group perhaps. And again, I'm always of the opinion with the broker groups, we have a much better chance of landing them as a new franchisee when we use a broker because we're in unison with them, right? Just an FYI. But social media is such a broad scope. There are probably a dozen people in this room that could talk about it more intelligibly than I could. But it's an important piece because it's today's society, right? And when people, especially during the pandemic, were sitting at home and had little to do, they were dialing for dollars on their computer, right? Looking, what can I do? What can I do next? And social media was massive for us during that time. And so we pummeled more and more information into our social media pages. And it was just amazing of where some of these information people came from and what walk of life they came from. And why did you find that piece on social media? It just blew my mind. So to emerging franchisors, again, make sure you get your social media pages up there. Get a company to help you with that. Very, very few people are gurus in the social media side. You've got to have somebody that knows what they're doing, can write the better blogs, can get the great content on there. I know Scorpion's here this weekend. I know there's a couple others out here as well that can do that. So big piece, social media.
Yeah, and I just, again, want to echo what Tim said. It is important, really, to have that separate franchise development presence versus what you're doing for your consumers, including if you're building out a franchise development website as well. Again, because the SEO and your page search and everything is just through two different audiences. You're looking for someone to buy a business, and on the other side, you're finding customers to use your products. So just keep that in mind. We did that. We made the investment, I believe, in the beginning of 2020. We took, the PuroClean franchise content off of the kind of consumer portion. We built it, the franchise development site on its own URL and threw money at it. And I can tell you right now, I mean, the website is closing at a 7% from leads to sales this year. Just making those changes and doing, its own SEO and page. So it's, the website used to not even close close to 2%. So we've gone from almost 2% to 7% just making that change.
Really good advice. Oh,
Right.
go
I
ahead,
want to
Jen.
make a plug on social media. There are some brands that don't need brokers and don't need to do a lot of advertising because they've got so much curb appeal. 2 examples, Nothing Bundt Cakes. I wanted that brand so bad I could taste it. I loved their product. I knew we could sell the heck out of it. They never used a broker. They sold by word of mouth and social media and people, just stopping in and getting the product and then wanting to take that back home. So that's one good example. Another one, and we've got Painting with the Twist. I begged. We could do great things with you. They never needed brokers because they were growing through social media. It was an event and people bought in because of what they saw online and the emotions around it. So think about your brand, and when you're deciding how you're going to sell, look at these different examples and don't waste money with things you don't need, and make sure you're capitalizing on some of these free things if it'll work for your brand.
Yeah, those I don't want to call them unicorns, but Orange Theory, Anytime Fitness, Jimmy John's, all examples in the last 10 years. If you're one of those brands, God bless you. You're sitting on something great. Did anybody see those window cleaners come down?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, think about these window cleaning franchises, and they got to recruit employees to go 50 floors up. Talk to them about recruiting franchisees because they know how to do it. This was not on our list, so I'm putting you guys all on the spot a little bit, but I think it's relevant here, so I'm going to bring it up. Portals. Does anybody have examples or experience with portals, and would you share what your thoughts are there?
Yeah. So we use a lot of portals, but it's also on here too that we're not really talking about is understanding your basic metrics. So, we track everything from leads to sales, all the way down to cost per lead, cost per acquisition. So we are always monitoring the performance of our portal business because we really want to try and find the best of the best. And we never do long-term deals. We'll do 6 months with them, see how it goes, see where these leads wind up in our funnels, because we also have a good CRM that can track that. So that's important too. So sometimes if one portal could be struggling, we'll say, yep, we're done, and now we want to go try this one. So in 4 years, I think right now I'm starting to see an increase in the close ratios of the portals because now we're focused in on it, right? Portals will deliver a lot of leads, probably where the bulk of all of our leads come from. So PuroClean averages about 500 leads a month, and I would say the portals drive a good chunk of that. So theoretically, though, they're also going to have the lowest close ratio, okay? I mean, typical, you're going to have to go through a lot of smiling and dialing to get someone on the phone. And typically, they close at like 0.02% because of the amount of leads, the deals that you're doing it. However, I think we were kind of elevating that up in our portal business. Now we're almost closing out a little over 1%. And that's dynamite because I've never seen a portal get past 0.2, 0.5%, so they will generate leads. You need to track your metrics, know what your lead to sales ratios are, see how they fit in, and don't be afraid to, we're great getting a lot of leads, but you got to turn them into sales, and that's the bottom line.
Anybody else have anything to say on portals?
Yeah, I don't use them very often. I try to be polite to some of our vendors in here today. I think a lot of it is concept dependent. I've never been part of a sexy concept. Like some of the ones that you mentioned are really cool, Orange Theory and stuff like that, and Bundt Cakes. Cleaning toilets and working with seniors, really not on everybody's priority list to go looking at franchising. So again, we rely heavily on the broker networks to get us that warm lead and to do those introductions based on their background. But they do have wonderful merit. Again, depending on what your concept is, I think the sexier it is, the more brand appeal it has, the easier those portals will work for you. For us, wasn't that productive.
Great, thanks. Real quick, so that was lead generation, and we'll try to get through this next part quickly so we can come back to any questions you might have there. But I just wanted to touch real quick on your franchise fee economics. You heard Tim say 0.02% of people close, and you might be thinking, if I'm paying per lead, how does that work? Well, if you reverse engineer it, it does. For those of you that were in the welcome session, we heard something from Rob Weddle. Think about every time you sign a franchisee, when they're successful, they typically have a 10-year agreement. Many of them will resell that business and it'll continue to go on. So private equity groups or whomever a buyer may be is looking at that as an annuity, right? So I talk to emerging brands all the time and I tell them, if you are using the franchise fee to fund operations, we typically won't work with a brand like that. I'm a believer in go find your funding somewhere else. Go make sure that you can sell it to a financial partner or have it yourself from a franchise or from a corporate location that you're operating. Use those funds to grow your infrastructure and keep that franchise fee as your marketing, if you will, to go out there and find the leads, which eventually turn into an annuity and a big value for your brand. I think that's the way I would encourage everyone to think about it. Okay, let's transition over to sales. And Tom, it's been too long since we've heard from you, so I'm going to start with you again.
Even though we can generate the lead, and it might be digitally or it might be from a broker, we understand we drop to the bottom for that candidate with respect to who they actually want to hear from or who they want to speak to first. So we utilize outbound callers and we utilize artificial intelligence. And we're about 60% of our contacts are made with the outbound callers, and about 40% are made with the artificial intelligence. And this is really important because the two of them have to actually work together for us to actually have that 70% contact rate that we get. We have the outbound callers that oftentimes have to leave a really compelling message for that candidate to take the next call because they never answer the phone on the first call, or for them to respond to the artificial intelligence that'll be working that candidate over the text string. And what the artificial intelligence will do, for example, is say, hey, Jania, thank you very much for inquiring about Floor Coverings International. We're wondering if you're available tomorrow at 2:30 or 5 for a quick introductory phone call. The person doesn't have any idea that they're talking to artificial intelligence. That person may respond back, no, tomorrow is not good for me, but how about Wednesday? The AI is automatically viewing your calendar or your developer's calendar and offering up times that you might be available. Then, after the candidate picks a time, the outbound caller will then call back and confirm that time, again, oftentimes via a voicemail. So it's really, really important to know how your candidate is going to actually respond and that you may not actually get them on the phone before you have that first bona fide call. Then the next one is, when our developers get on the phone with that candidate, and again, this doesn't matter if it's a broker lead that should be warm or if it's a digital lead that is going to be ice cold, that first 30 seconds is the most important time of that call, and we call that's the pitch. We thank them enthusiastically for giving us the time, and we immediately roll into literally a 30-second pitch that's designed to get them enthusiastic to continue on that conversation. So with this, it's what's the one or two most compelling reasons why that candidate is going to want to invest 3 more minutes in the call. And I'll give you an example for the flooring franchise. First thing we're going to tell them right up front, we're really excited that they gave us an opportunity to speak with them. One of the things that we love best about our brand is that we are the highest rated flooring company of all flooring companies in North America based on social media ratings and from NPS by our customers. And as a matter of fact, we have open territory right where that candidate is located, and that is why we are so excited to be able to bring our brand into that marketplace. That is all designed for the next 3 minutes, where we then ask the candidate, what are you looking for in a franchise? Now, when we move into what are you looking for a franchise, this is our qualifying stage. And we have 4 qualifiers that in this question that answer that we're looking for. Money, time frame, fit, and need. And this is all under the guise of what are you looking for? Hey, when you find the perfect franchise, how much were you thinking you were going to invest into a franchise? They're going to give us a number. We're just ticking off, does that fit our first qualifier? Then there's the second one. Hey, that's fantastic. Well, when you find the franchise that you're really interested in, when do you envision that business being up and started? That's time frame. Hey, that's fantastic. Tell me a little bit about your background. What are the 3 things about you that you think will make you a great business owner? That's fit. What we're looking for is what's their background, what are they really good at? And then our last one is, the last thing I'm really curious about here before I turn it over to you for questions is, what is it that made you look for a franchise or a business opportunity now? This is need, meaning what was it that was driving them to make this change? So at this point, we're roughly 4 minutes into the call. We've given them our pitch, we've qualified them, and now we've made a determination whether or not we want to continue forward with this candidate. And if you're doing it well, the candidate has no idea that this is what you're doing. And then you move them into what we call that transitionary stage, which is converting them into an actual candidate. Hey, this sounds fantastic. We would love to have a next call with you where we can actually walk you through what our business is, how it operates, and why you may be interested in it. This whole thing is about 5 to 7 minutes. You've hit gold if this call lasts 15 minutes, but they generally don't. 5 to 7 minutes, that's all you're going to get from the candidate. It's all designed to give your compelling argument why they want to consider you. You've determined whether or not they are a bona fide candidate, and you give them a reason to be on that next phone call. And there is an art to this, and you cannot screw it up, or that candidate is gone, and they're on to the next, their next concept.
One thing that should be noted is Floor Coverings International consistently has one of the best closing ratios in our portfolio.
Are there
They
any other
are
broker
good.
networks in the room? I see Red. Anybody else? Okay, we're 8.5 to 1, by the way, Red.
Yeah, that's great.
I had to take that opportunity.
No,
sorry.
absolutely. You got to throw out those stats when you can. I just want to point something out. That's the first 4 minutes or whatever it was, 10 minutes with a candidate, and that's how intentional they are, right? This is a typically 6, 8, 10-week process, and that's how intentional they are with the first 10 minutes. So that's how intentional you should think about every single step of the process. I know at FastLane we have an 80-some page training document all of our people go through many times for the entire process. So you have to be intentional. This is a huge decision for these people that are becoming a franchisee.
You know, Ryan, if I may,
oh, yeah.
as emerging franchisors too, understand that you're always competing, whether it's a broker lead, whether it's an internet lead, off your website, wherever it may be, you're always competing. And as competition goes, I always want to be first. I want to have the first email to them, I want to have the first phone call with them, I want to get them on the phone first and get them my information first. Because the odds are good they're going to be inundated. So if you're first and on top of the stack, that usually bodes pretty well.
Perfect. Good, good. All right, let's move on to Discovery Days, or what some people, Discovery Day, Confirmation Day. Jana, would you lead that one for us?
Sure. I think Discovery Days is something that got kind of lost in the shuffle of how it should be done during COVID because everybody went virtual. And what happened, we saw a lot of brands rushing to get to Discovery Day. And that was a big mistake. I think there was a lot of deals that were lost because people were just so excited and they wanted to get them to Discovery Day right away. And what you've done is blown the whole process. Discovery Days are the most effective when they are at the pinnacle. You know, all through the process, you're building excitement. Discovery Day should be when they're at the height of their excitement, whether it's virtual or in person. They're pretty sure. I used to always say, you know, you should be 80% sure this is where you want to be before you show up for a Discovery Day. If they're not that sold when they get there, you've decreased your chances of being effective at Discovery Day. When I think back to some of the brands, when I would go out and visit Discovery Days, a well-run Discovery Day looks like an orchestrated play. It really does. I mean, I've shown up where they would have the whole team line up and greet you, and everybody would talk about what I do for the franchisees as they were going through the line. It's not the day to go over your FDD. It's not the day to review the license agreement. It's not the day to do anything that's going to be a buzzkill. It needs to be excitement. They're looking forward to being a part of your brand. It can be the ultimate closer for you. So think about your discovery day, how you're going to lay it out. Have the people that are going to speak to the candidates scripted if they're not good at operating on the spur of the moment. Have them ready to what they should tell this candidate, what I do, and explain it in a little depth. Go through the things that are exciting about your brand and why they would want to join your brand. Also look at it as it's your last chance to turn them down if you see a bad fit. I went to a discovery day with Express Personnel 15 years ago. It was hilarious. And one of our top producers had a candidate there who also happens to be my boss. So he was texting me and asking me how his candidate did. And I had to text him back and say, I think he was in until he fainted in the men's room because he was so nervous. And they turned him down. The other thing I've seen is where people are rude to the wait staff the night before. If you want to see who someone really is, go out to dinner with them and see how they treat the servers and the people that are greeting them. If they're not going to treat those people well, they're not going to treat their team members well, and it's not who you want on your team. The other thing is, no offense to partying, but how much alcohol did they consume the night before, and what did they smell like when they showed up for Discovery Day the next day? Or did they show up on time? I had one brand tell me they had someone party too much the night before and then blasted the HQ team because they didn't call and wake him up. Now, if that doesn't scream we got a problem brewing, I don't know what does. So take advantage of all of these opportunities to really get to know the person before you sign a 10-year agreement with them. And having been operations as well as sales, once you hand it over to the ops people, this can be an absolute nightmare, and then it's going to kill your validation. So use Discovery Day for what it was intended, a screening process as well as a selling tool.
Yeah, and that was, that was the thing that was challenging during 2020, right, is, how do we do, we call it Meet the Team Day at PuroClean. How are we going to do this, and how are we, because we're a brand that, we like to take you out to dinner, we like to see who you are, and each executive likes to talk to the candidates that we have for the Meet the Team Day. How are we going to do this through Zoom? Right? It was like, oh my God! And then sell 50 franchises on top of that, because that was the goal. Like, I'm just going to go suck my thumb in the corner right now. The year's over. But we found a way to make it more engaging, right? In fact, my director of, I have a director of franchise development marketing, and she's amazing. What we did is, we had Zoom, we had two big giant TVs in our conference room, so we had candidates on one side and the presentations on the other. And what we did is we turned it into kind of an interview. And what Elizabeth would do, and she sits in every one, start to finish, and it's about like 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And basically, she interviews like Steve, the president, or this, and then it was so interacting. It just turned the whole thing around, and man, it just became more productive. So to do that, but so whether you're doing it, you could do virtual Meet the Team days. You can do in person still, because we like to have a group. But what we've also now doing is hybrids, right? So if you want to come. But we're also going to have potential candidates on Zoom, and we've had at least 5 buying groups come through the course of the year this year, do in person and participate on phone. And our Meet the Team Day close ratios have skyrocketed. So.
So to piggyback on Jana's comment too, at Discovery Day, as she said, they're never going to be more excited than on that day, which means every day after that, it can only go one direction. They're never going to get more excited after Discovery Day. So the sooner you close, the better off you're going to be. And the other point to Tim's is for the Discovery Day, it's got to be spot on. And if you're a C-level executive in that group and you haven't listened to everybody's presentation and critiqued it, and made sure that everything they say is on point and perfect, then you're missing the boat. Because that day is your day to shine and make sure everything is perfect.
That's great. Now I got to add my one nugget for Discovery Day. I tell my team all the time, the most important part of Discovery Day is the 6 weeks you spent with the candidate leading up to it, right? It's making sure they know what's expected. There's not going to be any surprises. They're qualified. They're ready. Jana used a percentage of being ready. We like to call it the 90-10 rule. They need to be 90% sure they're ready to move forward with the brand and prepared to close within 10 days, or they don't get an invite. They only get an invite when they're at that stage, because this is a very serious time for them. So the 6 weeks you spend with them prior is the most important of that discovery day. All right, we are down to about 14 minutes, and we have 2 topics. So I'm going to cut it down to 1 so we can leave a little bit of time for questions. So Tim, Courtney, if you would, start with using the FDD as a sales tool. And you have about 5 minutes on this.
So, I mean, this is simple, really. You know, the FDD is a boring document, right? The best thing to do is to, you know, put a cover on it. Put your company cover, make it yours, make it your, you know, your brand. And then pay attention to, you know, exactly, the graphs and the charts. You want this thing to really, just picture your FDD as your last marketing document. Oh, Jesus. New York hands up here. At least I didn't spill my water. That would have been fun. And then, you know, and what I do is I have my guys go through the document. And you want that document to do a lot of the selling for you. It's not making sure that they understand everything. It's not like a full contract review, but it's really, you know, we're pointing out, you know, some of the fees. We're pointing out the, obviously, royalties and things of that nature, making sure they have an understanding of that, what the initial investment is. Are they prepared to do that? So we actually do a few presentation with the candidates. All my sales guys do that, and it really, it's again, helped improve our metrics once you issue that document. Again, make it look nice. It is a boring document. I've seen some FDDs, and, like, you know, the item 19 graphs looks like they were just copied and pasted, and it just looks stupid. It really needs to represent your brand the whole way, and use it. I know, Tim, you also do some things like that.
Yeah, we do. And again, so much of these days is DocuSign, so it takes some of the personalization out of it where they're getting it first via DocuSign. But still, I think it's important that, you know, we force them at every, you know, how are you coming and reading the FDD? What questions you have? Keep prodding that. We do a formal review of the FDD, and as Tim said, it's through the numbers, understanding cost to get into your concept, ongoing costs, you know, overhead costs, and then, of course, we talk about potential revenues. No. But also, a point that was made earlier on paying a referral fee to current franchisees for new franchisees, which is a wonderful thing. We do it as well. Make sure it's in your FDD. Mm-hmm. So don't forget to put that in there.
All right, and I'm going to jump into the item 19, and a very specific point on the item 19. Many people use the item 19 so that you can disclose financial information. That's not what I'm going to touch on. The other way that you can use your item 19 is to be able to empower everybody on your sales team, including me, the CEO, of being able to sell the franchise using the actual metrics of your business. And I'm going to give you an example of how we use ours. We use our item 19 to very specifically be able to walk a franchise through how exactly they build and grow their business. And it is designed such for the sales team and for myself in Discovery Day to be able to create a vision for that candidate and show them a clear path. So, for example, in our item 19, we give our average ticket item or average sale or average flooring job that gets sold. We give the average closing ratio that our salespeople and franchisees, for every time they give a proposal to a customer, what percentage of the time they sell. We give an average number of leads that franchisees generate, an average number of proposals per week that a salesperson or a franchisee writes. Then we use it as such, and I take 10 minutes in the Discovery Day to set a candidate up for how they grow the business and then how to use the Discovery Day. I ask them, all right, what's our average close rate? They tell me, and I say, plug that into your calculator on their phone, because everybody has their phone. Then I say, what is our average close rate now? They tell me, and I say, okay, take that average sale, multiply it times that close rate, and then I say, how many proposals per week do our average salespeople or franchisees write? They tell me that. So after they've taken the average sale, multiplied it times the average close rate, times the average number of proposals, we then say, all right, how much is one salesperson generating per week in our business? And in our case, it's about $15,000. Then I say, now, How many average work weeks are there in a year? And it's 48. They take that 15,000, multiply it times 48, it's roughly $725,000. So that is what the average salesperson in our business with our average metrics will generate. The closing question is, you have a vision for where you need this business to be. How many salespeople do you need in your franchise? Every single person does the math and tells me, before I launch them into the rest of the discovery day, how many salespeople they need to have. I task them with, use the discovery day for you to figure out how you find the salespeople, generate the leads, get that number or that amount of business on a weekly basis done. I'm going to see you at the end of the discovery day, and I'm going to ask you, did you figure this out? Now, I just combined discovery day with FDD, but if you take the time in that item 19 to put the key metrics in that, of course, have to be true, they have to be accurate, they have to be verifiable, it allows you to be able to move into that position that you are showing your franchisee how they grow and make money, you focus them on the most important metrics, and you can sell the vision of your business. So it takes us about 2 weeks every March to go through those numbers, refine them, verify them, and get them done. And every March, it's a pain in the ass, right? And we ask ourselves, do we have to do this? But it is so worth it. As the CEO, I'm empowered to be able to actually sell my business with using the metrics, and my salespeople stay out of trouble. Now, they would say that they're also empowered as well, but of course, you have to worry about the other side. So.
Oh, it's great advice. One other thing I'm going to add, for you micro-emerging franchisors, a lot of times micro-emerging franchisors don't have any structure around how franchisees do financial reporting. And I'm not just talking top-line sales, I'm talking actual profits and losses. So I'd encourage you to work with a unified accountant or a profit keeper or QVinci or somebody like that, because as you think about once you hit, say, 10 units and you're ready to go to the next level and you call somebody to help, or you need that information to validate what your brand is doing. Too many times, franchisors are unaware of the numbers of their franchisees. So set up a structure early so it just becomes part of your culture. All right, with that, we have about 7 minutes. So I'm going to bypass our last topic and see if there's any questions. JD.
One point I guess you can talk about too, are you doing group discovery days or meet the team or individual?
We do group meet the team days.
As do we.
We do as well. Yeah.
I love group. There's nothing like creating a sense of urgency when you got a lot of people sitting in a room. So.
Unless you have a candidate that could be a challenge. And you know, that are overly inquisitive, anal retentive, you know those folks, right? That's a good one to do all by themselves.
I'm gonna add a second unless. Unless you're not confident you can get multiple people in a room, set the standard up front that you only do individual. That way somebody doesn't show up into a room and think, why am I the only person here?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the timing of sharing the FDD with a potential candidate, I've gotten mixed reviews. Within that 6 weeks that you're working with them prior to Discovery Day, when is the average time you would send that FDD to them?
So what we do at PuroClean is we have lead qualifiers, right? So our lead qualifiers take them on that journey. They pass the lead off to our franchise development directors. They usually will do a webinar to go over and see if this is the right business for them. Once they then agree to proceed, we're usually doing it right after that. And then that allows us then to, once we get that item 23 receipt back, then we can start looking at what a territory looks like for them as well. We know it's available because, you know, that's how we got far, but that's kind of like, hey, you need to get that item 23 back so we can begin to build your territory. So it's like, you know, you give me something, I'll give you something. So that's what we do about, you know, early on as possible, but not too early.
Go ahead.
That, same with us. It's after our second call with them. First intro call, then kind of an in-depth call. After that one, when we pretty much identify that they are a pretty viable candidate, want to move forward. The other thing I just question for a second, 6-week process. For us, that's a bit long. I don't have enough stuff to keep them occupied for 6 weeks. So we like to be in a 3 or 4 week process and get things moving pretty quickly.
One other important part of why you might want to deliver it right after an intro call is it gives them time to budget and take it out to a funding partner. So
Right,
they can
and that's another good thing too. With the lending is been so slow recently too. You want to start them having that discussion about getting financing and how they're going to be doing that. So that's why we've also encouraging once they get that to really start looking at their finance options if they're going SBA or doing 401k rollover, personal loans, whatever.
What percentage of candidates you turn down at Discovery Day?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Less than 10?
Yeah, very few.
Yeah,
Because
very few.
if they made it to the Discovery Day, if anybody's going to get turned down at Discovery Day, then our sales team did something wrong. Yeah, it happens, but it's very rare.
Unless you have one of those embarrassing moments at
Yeah.
dinner, that's probably how they're washing out at that point.
One last question.
So there's some very established brands that have been doing this for a very long time, presumably have healthy budgets to be, running sales teams and doing all the things that you're doing. But there's a lot of micro-emerging brands that don't have those resources. So could you take some of the advice that you had given us today and kind of boil that down to maybe 2 or 3 lean iterations for the micro-emergers who don't have the resources? Or should they not be playing in the sandbox if they don't have the resources?
Every brand that I've been involved in started like from scratch. So everyone, none of the brands I walked into, we had a big, huge, healthy budget. So we did have funding, we did have money, and I would say most of the tactics that we're talking about here don't actually cost a lot of money. It's human resource investment. If there was one place for me, I'll speak, that you want to make sure on the Fran Dev team you invest first, it's your salesperson. Essentially you get a top talent because you can't take a mediocre talent and be able to execute really well on a system, but you can take a top talent and have that person help you develop your system. But most everything we're talking about doesn't take a big budget.
I just want to add one real quick thing to that. It depends on what stage you're in. Micro-emerging, let's say you're in your first few. Those first few are so valuable, so important. They have to perform. And so I'm a big believer that if you're still very small micro-emerging, those first few should be friends and family. Some people may not agree with me, and they should be close. These are people that trust you. These are people that are going to hang with you even if you screw a few things up early. You want them to be within an hour or two of driving distance so you can go see them. Once you've established that core, then you can start thinking about what's the next step. But for those very small micro-emerging, those first few have to succeed or it's a long road back. Well, very good. I think we're at time. If you guys would, we talked about this. Every time we had a franchisee, it's had an annuity. We talked about how interested private equity is in franchisor brands. So if I had to guess, I'd say this panel just created about, $50 million of value for this room. So let's give them the appropriate thanks.